Welcome everyone. Good afternoon and a warm welcome to day 2 of the World Green Building Week. This is Pranati Shroff-Munot, the founder of Sustain and Save, and host and moderator for today. After a great inauguration session yesterday, our topic for today is of utmost importance and great concern this time. Preparing for post-COVID workplace, air quality and HVAC. Something we've all been thinking about and working on in these times. On behalf of Prem Jain Memorial Trust and all the partners, I would like to welcome all the speakers for today's session and our partner for today, Apiche Institute of Technology, School of Architecture and Planning, Greater Noida. Welcome to all the students and the faculty today. Prem Jain Memorial Trust is delighted to conduct this knowledge series for colleges, students, the youth of our country from all over the country. Being hosted from the 1st to the 25th of September 2020 as a part of the World Green Building Council's annual campaign that empowers all to deliver buildings. The aim is to call on the building sector policy makers and the government to take urgent action to deliver net zero buildings. Also to provide a showcase for those leaders already taking action to show where, why, and how they are achieving it. It is time to bring these solutions to scale, and the industry is ready to deliver. This campaign is a mission for communities, for the net zero buildings for economies. With this thought as its core, Prem Jain Memorial Trust, in association with Indian Green Building Council, in a week-long celebration, PGMT, the World Green Building Week 2020, wherein each session is being presented by an eminent sustainability stalwart and exclusively curated for our partner institutions and their students. These 8 sessions span from 21st to the 26th of September, and all of us are really looking forward to listening to all these stalwarts. This event is a tribute to Dr. Prem Jain, fondly known as the father of the green building movement in India, and his lifelong commitment to education and sustainability. He was instrumental in single-handedly creating a green Bharat and ushered in a shift in the way buildings are conceived, designed, and built in India. He facilitated India stands tall in the global green building movement and aspired for India to be Jagat Guru in the sustainability movement on the built environment. With this mission, at every Indian contributes 1 square feet of green to their motherland. Prem Jain Memorial Trust has been involved in a number of activities, and the prime focus has always been green education for the student, the youth of tomorrow, be it for holding monthly lectures for students through Living Building series and the Prem Jain Coliseum series, through eminent industry speakers, session-wise videos recording of which are available with the website, on their website for students. The trust is also involved in supporting unsung, unrecognized, young bright talent in school and colleges. With support and intervention initiatives, Trust continues to promote the green innovation, technologies, and celebrating achievements of technologists dedicated to promote sustainability. To share more light on this whole initiative and about the Prem Jain Memorial Trust, I would now like to invite Payal Jain, founder trustee, Prem Jain Memorial Trust, to share the vision and thoughts of the foundation. Over to you, Payal.
Thank you, Pranati. Very happy to be here. I just want to welcome everybody here today. Mr. Metal, Baroon Agarwal, Mr. Vivek Sabarwal, Anand Khatri, Pranati from Sustain and Save, and our IGBC friends, everybody who's here, and students. Thank you very much for finding the time to join us. Welcome to the PJMT World Green Building Week 2020. I want to share a little bit about the Prem Jain Memorial Trust. I know Pranati has spoken a lot about Dr. Jain. I'll add a little bit to it. I'll only take a few minutes. Prem Jain Memorial Trust was founded in memory of my dearest father, Dr. Prem Jain, with a mission to carry on his love for Mother Nature and lifelong commitment to creating a greener earth. He had a very special connection to students of all ages, and he believed that sustainability must become a way of life at a very early age for it to really make a change on our beautiful planet. When he returned to India from the US after his PhD in the early 70s, he started talking about green. And for that, at that time, most of us believed green was only a color. Nobody understood what green buildings were, why environment was so important to preserve, to nurture. We have come a long way since then. And he was single-handedly instrumental in creating a green Bharat. Today, we can boast of 5.7 billion square feet of green in India. And we stand at the second place after the US as far as the entire world is concerned. For those of you who didn't know him, I'd like to add something personal. I do want to tell you that he lived on the path of dharma, justice, integrity, truth, and humility. Everything he did was with purpose and intention, commitment, dedication, kindness, compassion, and love. That's what made him so special to all those who were attached to him, worked with him, learned with him, or associated with him. He lived with the greatest pride for his mother and his motherland, whom he referred to as his Janani Janmabhoomi, both of whom he worshipped. His lifelong commitment is best expressed in words of Guru Rabindranath Tagore, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where words come from the depths of truth, where the mind is led forward into the heaven of freedom, my father, let my country awake. Dr. Jain took over as chairman of Indian Green Building Council in 2007 and set his sights high on achieving 1 billion square feet by 2012. At that time, the population of India was 1 billion, and his mantra was 1 square foot for every Indian in the country. India crossed the 1 billion mark in 2011, a year before schedule. And then he went on to set the 2 billion mark, which also we crossed by 2014. His target was 2015. By 2018, we had hit 5.7 billion. Now I know in the last Indian Green Building Congress, I saw the 7 billion mark being crossed and a cake cut with 7 candles on it. So we are moving very, very fast ahead, but there's still a long ways to go. Dr. Jain's association with IGBC goes back to 2003, when Spectral and Dr. Jain designed the first Godrej Green Business Center, which went on to becoming the world's greenest building in 2004. We are in 2020 now. That was 16 years ago. The Indian Green Building Council is part of the Confederation of Indian Industries, and it was formed in the year 2001 with a vision to enable a sustainable built environment for all and facilitate India to be one of the global leaders in the sustainable built environment by 2025. I think we are well on our way to achieving that. IGBC is responsible for developing new green building rating programs, certification services, green building training programs, and works closely with state governments, central governments, World Green Building Councils, and many agencies in promoting green buildings. Thank you very much to IGBC for being my family, for being part of this journey with Prem Jain Memorial Trust. We had Mr. V. Suresh inaugurate the series yesterday. He's not with us today, he's busy. But I know the IGBC family is with us. Many of them are part of the session today. I especially want to thank Mr. Kamal Metal, who has taken out the time and who has been one of the founder members of the trust. He has kindly taken out the time to speak to all of you. He's a guru and we'll talk to you about air, clean water. Is something he has lived all his life. And I've heard about it for 20 years from him. Also, thank you, Baroon Agarwal, for being here. Thank you for taking the time. I want to thank Pranati, Sustain and Save, APJ Institute of Technology, Mr. Vivek Sabharwal, who's again been involved in the trust from the day it was formed, Mr. Anand Khatri, who will be speaking after this, Sandeep Narang, for starting this initiative. This is his brainchild. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for him. Dr. Hariharan, who threw us into the ocean with web sessions, and thanks to him, we've come a long way in 5 months. He may be here, but if he's not, my sincere gratitude to him. All the trustees and the Board of Governors of Prem Jain Memorial Trust, who make every single day and every single initiative possible. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Payal ma'am. It is indeed an honor to know him, and I could see in the chat box a lot of people sharing thoughts about how they were involved with him, how they were attached with him, how they miss him. We will always cherish fond memories of his great love, affection, and wonderful teaching. And I too will always remember him. I was fortunate enough to interact with him at multiple occasions, and it is a definite honor to know him. I would now like to invite Mr. Vivek Sabharwal, Professor, Director, a PJ Institute of Technology, School of Architecture and Planning, Greater Noida, to share his thoughts.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Pranati. Thank you, Payalji and PGMT. It's a great honor to be here uh, and to be associated with PGMT and IGBC on such an important endeavor that is being carried out for this whole week on such wonderful, purposeful presentations. The first day was excellent way to start, and I'm sure today's presentations by both Mr. Kamal Miatal and Mr. Baroon Agarwal, who are very passionate about what the work they're doing. It will be beneficial for the students and the faculty in understanding the important aspect of clean air, which we generally take it for granted, or we've forgotten what clean air is all about. So I would request our moderator, Professor Anand Khatri from APJ School of Architecture, to kickstart the session and then further to introduce speakers for today. Over to you, Professor Anand.
Thank you, Vivek sir. We start with an introduction about our college.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to be here with you all for the celebration of the World Green Building Week being celebrated by the Prem Jain Memorial Trust and IGBC. I represent the School of Architecture and Planning, which works through the APJ Institute of Technology in Greater Noida. It comes under the aegis of APJ Education Society with Ms. Sushma Paul Burlia as the chairman. We have been recognized by COA, AICTE, and we are affiliated to AKTU. With a holistic approach to the development of students and the pursuit of architecture, and established in 1999 on a 29-acre site in Greater Noida, APJ School of Architecture and Planning is a premier institute for architecture in Uttar Pradesh. APJ School of Architecture and Planning, under the director, architect Vivek Sabharwal, has developed a great e-learning initiative. It has a very strong industry interface and a strong focus on research-based projects and consulting the government for understanding its development projects. As architect Vivek Sabharwal says, the thrust is to spark the minds of the young architects and faculty to think holistically about architectural education in the ever evolving education world. The vision of the AIT, which believes that education should enable the students to soar high morally, socially, and spiritually, enmeshed with the thought of creating a vision and a family together of a great faculty and opportunities for students to excel and nurture their aspirations, to be able to get the most experienced people from their respective fields to share their ideas and experience with the faculty and students has been the driving force for the institute. And with an eye on doing national level seminars, faculty development programs, and special lectures from field experts, and initiatives during special times and times of special needs like COVID, APJ School of Architecture and Planning has also been associated with PJMT as an academic wing of its thoughts and the great energy that was there in the thinking of Dr. Prem Jain. Every year we celebrate green energy through a competition in which students are invited to demonstrate sustainable and innovative solutions for built environment using integrated approach for modern day requirements. This award ceremony is conducted annually during the student festivals, and we have the great opportunity of having Payal Jain with us annually for the distribution of awards. Such industry driven initiatives where academia walks a mile, upholding the call of the hour and working together, the two establish a great energy, training rising minds and upholding values needed for humanity, are a need of the hour. We look forward for more with PJMT and IGBC.
I now invite Professor Kamal Mittal, and I would like to tell you something about him. Kamal Mittal is an Indian environmental activist and CEO of Paharpur Business Center and Software Technology Incubator Park based in New Delhi, India. Mittal held a talk at TED 2009 entitled How to Grow Your Own Fresh Air. He has now authored a book entitled How to Grow Fresh Air, so very much important for all of us. After becoming allergic to New Delhi's polluted air in 1992, Mittal discovered that three common household plants could help reduce the pollutants in the air, making him a workplace wellness pioneer. Like most innovations, the PDC emerged from necessity. In the mid-1990s, Meertal was advised by his doctors to leave Delhi when he became allergic to the city's toxic air. Through a mix of trial and error, he arrived at a formula by which a curated selection of household plants helped to improve indoor air quality, the IAQ. Meertal reels off figures from a 3 years study conducted by the CPCB, the Central Pollution Control Board, with the help of the Chittaranjan National Cancer Institute, Kolkata, and published in September 2008. 34% fewer respiratory ailments, 12% fewer headaches, 52% fewer cases of eye irritation, and 9% fewer cases of asthma. And this in itself is very amazing. Along with him, we have Mr. Baroon Agarwal. Mr. Baroon Agarwal is an entrepreneur. In his current role, he founded Breathe Easy Consultants Private Limited, the leading full-service indoor air quality solutions company in India. He has authored a book, How to Grow Fresh Air, published by Juggernaut Books. Baroon has served on the Indoor Air Quality Assessment Working Group of the USGBC. He is a founding member of Indoor Air Quality Association USA India chapter and is currently the chapter director for India. He is a member of ISHRE and is a founding member of the IEQ committee of ISHRE that has developed the first international standard for IEQ, Indoor Environmental Quality, published in 2016. He is also technical group, the TG chair for Indoor Air Quality, TG, under ISHRE. He is a climate reality leader trained by the Vice President Al Gore. He teaches a course on human wellness in the built environment at the School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, as a visiting faculty. I look forward for a very wonderful session with both of you, Mr. Kamal Mittal and Mr. Baroon Agarwal.
Thank you. Thank you, Anand Khatri, for welcoming our two speakers for today, Mr. Kamal Miertal and Baroon Agarwal. Um, our topic for today, preparing for post-COVID workplace, air quality and HVAC guidelines, is of course the most important and of great concern when commercial spaces had just begun to gain a high and people offices, which made wherein the last 10 years we saw a sudden increase in the open planning concept. The last 6 months have been roller coasters for many, make define and rethink the purpose, the way we live, work, learn, eat, and our workplaces, which were formerly the epicenter where we spent 8 to 10 hours every single day, have just lost its glory, have been impacted as on date. With this in mind, post-COVID workplaces is of key importance to many. Guidelines to meet these are being discussed and are being looked at. The ISHRE, IGBC have all started looking at these aspects and added guidelines to mitigate the situation. With this in mind, I request our speakers to kindly share their views and give light to all the students on what the future looks like. Over to you, sir. Kamal Miatal, sir, if you could please unmute yourself. Kamal Miatal, sir, please could you unmute yourself?
Okay, go ahead.
Yes.
Well, thank you. It's been a great honor to be able to speak to this group. I'm also thankful to Payal for founding the PJMT, the Prem Jain Memorial Trust, in memory of her father, whom I had worked very closely with for many, many years, perhaps close to 35 years. What I remember of him is that he was very fond of children. And what he said was, we are the past and the present, and the children are the present and the future. So you must spend time with them and take your ideas to them so that they can take it forward and benefit from it. Tell you a little story. My reaction to that was that I have done my stint as a board member of IIT, as chairman of the northern region of AICTE, and also being on the board of Narvodaya Vidyalayas. So I said, I've done my stint. So he said, no, what you have done is learn to grow fresh air using plants. And the Ayurveda call it. The plants are something which we live with. So you must share your story and not keep it to yourself. So that had been the motivation for really going and also speaking at TED. One of the motivations of speaking at TED about how to grow fresh air and my own experiences, because till that time I was keeping it to myself to the extent that I wanted to benefit from it. And of course, all our occupants and people in the building, but there was no attempt to take it to the people at large. And this is what he made me do. And he always guided me and also encouraged me at each step. So he was a person whom I could lean on and bounce off ideas. And he would always be all smiles and encouraging, and also show me areas where I may go wrong. So with that, let me share with you today what we have learned over these last close to 25, 30 years now of having good air quality in our building. So it is not a theoretical exercise which I'm doing. What I'm doing is learning from experience, and now that we have this COVID, to see how we can superimpose what we have done all these years to make sure that we don't get infected by COVID in buildings. As such, as far as PM 2.5s are concerned, even the day after Diwali, the PM 2.5s in our building are less than 15 microgram per meter cube. And the CO2 levels are around 600, and the TVOCs are all within the parameters which we have set by ASHRAE and ISHRAE and so on. Now, as far as this pandemic is concerned, we know that it has had a very profound impact on how we live, work, and socialize. We now have to depend upon hope and science backed by experience for the past 6 or 9 months. The world statistics are not good. We've had over 31 million cases with nearly 1 million deaths. 23 million people have recovered, and in India, and out of which there are 8 million active cases. In India, we've had over 5.5 million cases with 140,000 deaths, and nearly 100,000 new cases are coming up each day. The COVID virus is said to spread from infected people by coughs and sneezes and by their touch on surfaces that have a virus sitting on it. New findings are that it is also transmitted through aerosols in the air and over greater distances than 2 meters thought of earlier. The size of the COVID virus is about 0.5 micron to 10 microns, and the surface area of our lungs is very large, nearly the size of a full-size tennis court. We have over 600 million alveoli in our lungs. That they are like a grape-like structure. That is where the transfer of oxygen takes place from a gaseous state to our blood. The path leading to our lung from our throat is commonly called the trachea or the windpipe. It is the continuation of the airway below the larynx. The walls of the trachea are strengthened by stiff rings of cartilage to keep it open. The trachea is also lined with cilia, which sweeps fluids and foreign particles out of the airway so that they stay out of the lungs. That's why we cough and we throw out the garbage in our throat as such. The first protection for us is the throat and the trachea. We must have a strong immunity system in our body and that should be the first place to fight the virus. Once it enters the lungs, we have a problem, and out of the blood saturation levels start falling down to 94% or less. This is something which we need to focus on to have our immunity system up. That's why older people whose immunity systems are compromised get sick much more, and they get more serious, and there are more deaths in the older generation. So we must make sure that our protective mechanisms are not compromised by indoor air quality. For achieving this, we need to do the following in the indoor air. Reduce the PM 2.5 particulates to less than 15 micron per meter cube, and ideally to less than 10 microns. We can do this using any excellent filter system, and which does not really ionize the air, etc., and create some other problems and gives out ozone. We should have an H13 filter to trap the COVID particle and not allow it to circulate in the air. This filter is fine enough so that it does not allow this 0.5 micron particle to go through. So this is something which we need to focus. Keep the CO2 levels to less than 600 ppm, because CO2 is a good indicator for well-ventilated room. The temperature should ideally be 24 to 26 degrees centigrade, and the relative humidity should be 40 to 60%. There's enough evidence to show that a higher humidity, perhaps of 70%, is better than one below 40%, because the real trouble starts when the humidity falls below 40%. And this is true in northern India, for example. In the winter time, the humidity is extremely low, and we need to be very, very careful when, in that case, the PM 2.5s are extremely high, and so is the humidity very, very low. So we are in great trouble come winter time. It's not only the West and the colder countries, but even in Delhi, we should really think about this. Bacteria fungus level should be kept as per ISHRAE standards. That means all the ducts should be cleaned regularly, the cooling coils, whether it's a split AC or in the HU, should be cleaned, and wherever there is condensation, it should be exposed to UV light to at least kill the bacteria and the fungus, not the virus. For virus killing, we need the UVC light. Now, the wavelength of this light has to be 254 nanometers, and in the air stream needs to be totally covered by this light, and at least for 1 minute. I understand that perhaps there'll be stronger bulbs, stronger light sources available, which can kill it in less than 1 minute, but I've not seen really any research on this. And this would be a good area to really research and publish some information, because this can be something which would work. If a human is directly exposed to this light, then it is highly injurious, causing cancer. So we cannot use it just like that. We have to be very careful. We've all known that social distancing, soap washing of hands, wearing of multi-layer masks is a must, and best is to use a N95 mask. One should go down and download the Arogya Setu app and update it as often as we can, so that it gives us information if we have come close to an infected person. And as we know, taking one's body temperature and the SpO2 readings of blood oxygen readings every day also helps. To conclude, so far the stress has been in green buildings or in buildings at large to have energy efficiency in buildings to save money. And now we have clearly felt and observed the need that we need to optimize occupant health and well-being. In fact, this is another story with Dr. Jain. I always did feel that green buildings were great, but we need buildings which were great for occupants of the building. Because what is the reason for building a building? It is for occupants. What is the first thing now which comes to our mind today? It is good health and making sure that we keep safe from infections. Fortunately for us, we have a standard in place called CII IGBC standard for health and well-being for occupants. And we must design and operate our buildings now to support occupant health and get certified under this standard. In fact, every building, every home ideally should be certified for this particular standard, which is not so difficult. Dr. Jain, when he was giving me directions as to what should be into the standard, I happen to be the chair of this committee of IGBC to develop this standard. And he said, it should be for the average person. Don't make it too technical. Don't make it too difficult. Make sure that people can at least get in and start using it to help themselves for better health and happiness. Remember, if you are not healthy, you really cannot be very, very happy. So health contributes to happiness, reduce stress, and better life. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words and sharing insight what your story about Prem Jain sir and your interactions, and also about what you believe is the thoughts on indoor air quality, what needs to be done. Our next speaker, Baroon Agarwal, founder and CEO of Breathe Easy Consultants Private Limited. I'll now request you to share some light on the same.
Thank you so much. A very, very good afternoon to everyone. Just want to start by saying a big thank you to Payal Jain for having me over here, and to the entire team of Dr. Prem Jain Memorial Trust. Very quickly, I have so many memories of Dr. Jain, but I have to say one thing. He was my inspiration and somebody who motivated me to go and teach children. And I created a course on human wellness, which I teach at the School of Planning and Architecture as visiting faculty. I have enjoyed that more than probably anything else that I have done in my life. And I owe it to Dr. Jain for pushing me and encouraging me and motivating me to do something like that. So there are many other lovely incidents that I've had sharing with him. The kind of passion he has put into me in doing the kind of work on air quality is something that I'll never forget. So I want to talk today about what we can do as young architects from a design perspective as we are making homes, as we are making offices, as we are making different places. We are in an unprecedented time today. COVID-19 has impacted not just us here in Delhi or India, but the entire world. And you're going to see a major change, a major shift in the way we start designing spaces. And the reason for that is there are aerosol scientists who have said that COVID-19 is airborne. WHO has considered airborne precautions for medical staff after they've seen that coronavirus can survive in the air. So if your air in a closed space is potentially infectious, is potentially got COVID-19 or any other virus in the future, what is it that we need to do in order to design those spaces to make them safe for our occupants? And that's where this particular presentation will hopefully come in handy at some point in the future. So I'd like to talk about this one slide in terms of the numbers. I've been doing presentations like this for the last 6-7 months, and India was not even on this chart when I started doing my presentations. And slowly it started rising up the charts to the top 100, to the top 50 countries in the world, to the top 10 countries in the world, and then slowly to the top 5, and then to the top 3. And now we are on the top 2. We are number 2 on the list. And I think my prediction is in the next 35 to 40 days, we will become the number 1 most infected country in the world with coronavirus. So my question to everyone at this stage is complete mitigation possible? Can you design a space given our current knowledge and understanding of COVID-19 so that it is 100% safe with regards to COVID-19? The answer to that perhaps is no. You cannot make something that is 100% safe, but you can take all the measures to reduce the risk as much as possible so that the spread from an indoor space is minimized. And we're going to talk about those steps and make it as simple as possible. I've taken my very technical presentations that I do to large groups of engineers and architects, and I've made it into a very, very simple format, which hopefully will appeal to all the students on this particular presentation. So the first thing I like to talk about is that you can't manage what you can't measure. So you've got to start being able to measure what is in the air, because then only you'll be able to say, I know there's a problem and now I need to manage it. So the first step in the 4 simple steps that I like to talk about is monitor, design, remediate, and manage. So if we first have to monitor, we need to get the right parameters that we need to monitor, and we need to get the right equipment to monitor. From a parameters perspective, we've got particulate matter, PM 2.5. And the reason why PM 2.5 is important is it's not just particles of 2.5 micrometers in diameter. It's actually covering the entire spectrum of particles from 0.3 till 2.5. And at some point in the future, as technology improves, we'll cover all the way from 0 to 2.5 microns in diameter. And that will include all particles like viruses and bacteria. So PM 2.5 is a very important parameter to measure. Then we've got total volatile organic compounds, carbon dioxide, which gives us fresh air from outside typically, or with the help of natural plants, as we've done at the Paharpur Business Center. And then relative humidity and temperature. We'll talk about each of these 5 and how to control and manage these, but you need to have some sort of monitoring system that can perhaps monitor and manage and give you readings of all of these 5 parameters over a period of time. So I put together the 2 documents over here. Both of them are available freely online. On the chat, I put the link to the IGBC Health and Wellbeing Rating for Occupants. You can click on that link and download the document which has the pilot version, the abridged reference guide. Also on the ISHRAE website, you can download the COVID-19 guidance document. I was fortunate to be part of the committee that created the COVID-19 ISHRAE guidance document for air conditioning and ventilation systems. And the 5 pillars that all of these, whether it's the IGBC system or the ISHRAE system or the ASHRAE system, pretty much any system around the world, and I've been lucky to be part of many of these. The main 5 pillars that we talk about when it comes to indoor spaces from an HVAC perspective are A, ventilation. You've got to have fresh air. Second, and we all love air-conditioned spaces, and as our spaces become more and more air-conditioned, we start to close our windows, we start to close our fresh air intakes in our HVAC to save energy, and that is very, very bad for us. So ventilation is a very important part, even with air conditioning. The second is draft and airflow. The third is temperature. The fourth is relative humidity. And I've left the most important one to the end, which is filtration and pressurization. And we'll talk about all 5 of these very, very briefly. So dilution is a solution to indoor air pollution. Dr. Jain has used this a few times. Mr. Pava, another veteran in the industry, has used this many times. So dilution is essentially bringing in air from outside to dilute your indoor pollutants. So typically you have certain pollutants indoors, your air outside is considered fresh. Now, of course, there are times in Delhi when outside air is anything but fresh or clean. So you bring in that air, but you filter it, you remove the outdoor pollutants because the indoor pollutants are different from outdoor pollutants. So you remove the outdoor pollutants, you bring in outside air, hence diluting the indoor pollutants, and that is one of the solutions. So that is your ventilation solution. Part of that is your draft. At what speed is the air coming to you within that room? Let's say you have an air conditioner that is running. If you run it on high speed in a common area where you have people from different areas coming together, that draft of air coming from the air conditioner and going back as return air into the air conditioner at a high speed could actually move the virus in the air. If I cough or even speak, the air that comes out of my mouth can potentially, any particle can travel longer distances if there's a strong draft. And that draft has to be managed and kept at a minimum. A pedestal fan behind me can dramatically have an impact on the person sitting in front of me because all the air coming from me, especially if I'm not wearing a mask, can be impacted. So I'm sitting over here right now with Mr. Mittal, but I've taken my mask off for this presentation, but at the end of it, I'm going to ensure I spray and I sanitize this area because while speaking, there are certain particles that have perhaps come on this keyboard, on this desk over here, and I don't want him to get contaminated. So I'm going to sterilize this entire area before I leave. So it's very important from a draft perspective to ensure that people around you are not impacted because of the AC draft or a pedestal fan or an exhaust fan that is installed in the room. So just like this is an example, you have an air conditioner running, people sitting over there, and you have return air and supply air. If that air draft is too strong, if they're not wearing a mask, potentially it could spread to more and more people within the space. Temperature and humidity are easier, so I'm not going to spend too much time. Temperature, what is the optimal temperature? So the standards say that you want to increase it a little bit higher from your existing 21, 22, 23 degrees to perhaps 24 to 26 degrees centigrade from a COVID perspective. Even relative humidity, I have another chart over here. For relative humidity, where viruses are concerned, you're best between 45 and 65% relative humidity. And as Mr. Mittal said earlier, a little bit higher is better than lower. So you want to keep your RH between that 40 to 60, 45 to 65%. And it's simple. If it's too dry, you can add something as simple as a bowl of clean water in that area, and your relative humidity will go up. And if it is too humid, then you may have to turn your air conditioning on or some other technology to reduce your relative humidity. Now coming to filtration. This is a very, very important part of the overall strategy. We have to, there are many technologies out there and we'll talk about them, but installing MERV 13 filters is something that can be done in most air handling units. And I'm going to reference two different standards over here, MERV 13 and H13. Please recognize that there is a difference between the two. A MERV 13 filter and an H13 filter are different in that an H13 is closer to a MERV 17 filter. So there are two different standards, two different references. So H13, if I am to compare, is closer to a MERV 17, which is a much higher grade, higher quality filter than a MERV 13. The pressure drop on a MERV 17 filter or an H13 filter will be very high, and it will be very difficult to install that in an existing air handling unit because your motor and fan speed will need to be changed, or the motor will need to be changed in that case. So a MERV 13 filter is typically something that can be put in without major changes to an AHU. Again, engineering design needs to be looked at of that particular air handling unit, whether a MERV 13 filter can be installed or not. And for recirculation within the space, an H13 filtration is very, very valuable and very useful in the COVID world. We've done a test with an H13 filter in a particular room in a high-end laboratory in Europe, and found that within 10 minutes, the COVID-19 particles were pretty much eliminated in that room. So having an H13 filter running in recirculation mode can have a huge impact in today's world. Why is the certification important? Because a lot of people today are selling HEPA filters and using the word H13 very loosely without the proper certification. So ensure that you get the right kind of certificates when you're specifying technology for your clients, for as you start to build or design spaces for your clients. Make sure you specify the right kind of certifications for these technologies. You want to make sure that those systems are leak tested, that the filter changes are done correctly. And then there's a lot of conversation about kill versus trap. People are talking about technologies where you can kill the virus versus trapping the virus. Is that necessary? Not really, because the life of a virus on a surface is no more than 2 to 3 to 4 days at most. So if I was to leave some virus on this particular table, and if Mr. Mittal did not come here for the next 4 days, and we did not sterilize the space, after 4 days, this would be completely safe and not a problem at all. But since he is going to be working over here, we're going to ensure we sterilize it. So in the filter, similarly, if a virus is there for 3 to 4 days, it's then inactive. So it's not necessary to kill the virus within a filter, as long as you have a good quality filter that you're sure is trapping everything and not allowing anything to leak from the sides of the filter. So there are lots of other filtration technologies, negative ionization, positive ionization in the name of plasma cluster or bipolar ionization. There's UVGI, there's photocatalytic oxidation, and then we talked about the media filtration, which is the HEPA grade filters. And very quickly, I'll touch upon some of these. So negative ionization, plasma cluster, bipolar ionization, or ozonizers. Be very, very careful of these. People will tell you that they have huge efficiencies in terms of reducing viruses and bacteria in the air. They may have some efficiency in doing that, but they can also have a huge amount of side effects. So be very, very careful. And that's why I say be aware. Be aware in terms of what you're putting into your client site or into your own site. Ionizers can actually be harmful to health. And the reason I say that, this is a picture of the greenhouse that we have at the Paharpur Business Center. We use natural plants to purify the air, to bring down our carbon dioxide levels. And we had put, you see this little gray box on top over there? We had put these ionizers in our greenhouse a few years ago. And for the first time in 30 years, all the plants in this greenhouse died. Every single plant pretty much died. And we were shocked. We didn't know what to do. Later on, we found out that it was these ionizers that were not only pulling the particulates from the air, but also producing ozone in reasonably high amounts is what that ended up killing all the plants over there. For the first time, we had to change all the plants. We removed the ionizers when we found out. And since then, we've been okay with the greenhouse and have not had any problems. UVGI, again, a great technology if it is installed and put correctly. Having towers like on the right with regards to which can potentially be expose human beings, you have to be very, very careful of UVCs, which is installed either in the ceiling or as robotic systems that roam around a particular facility, because direct exposure to these can be very harmful for human beings. So putting them in the right way, at the right intensity, with the right, the 254 nanometers from a wavelength perspective, are very important. And typically most UV needs a 1 minute to 15-minute exposure. So when you put it in an air handling unit where the air is moving very quickly, chances are it's not going to do enough to sterilize the air of your virus particles. However, there are newer technologies in the UV spectrum which talk about much, much higher intensity UV, which can reduce that exposure time from 1 minute to perhaps 3 seconds. 3 seconds is still a lot of time for the air as it's moving very quickly through an air handling unit. So in the supply duct for a period of 8 meters or 9 meters, if you can put a multiple UV lights and ensure that the air is exposed to that UV, you can get fairly reasonable results. Again, you've got to make sure that you simulate it with the right software for the UV, that you get the right results. So airspeed, contact time, and distance from the UV bulb and overall intensity is what will dictate the performance. It needs to be shone directly onto surfaces. Anything in the shadows, it will not affect. It won't kill anything in very fast moving air. So don't expect that your air will be sterilized as contact time is not sufficient. Some UV, if it starts to move away from your 254 nanometers, and it will over a period of time, can produce ozone again as a byproduct, and it can be harmful to eyes and skin. So be careful. It may be the right technology, but it has to be installed and monitored very carefully so that it doesn't give you any harmful side effects. Photocatalytic oxidation, again, ONH particles which then are emitted, and you've got titanium dioxide coated surface, and you have a UV light which hits that titanium dioxide surface, and it emits your hydroxyl OH particles, which again is an oxidizer which kills or at least deactivates bacteria, viruses, and other organic pollutants. It can produce some byproducts. The marketers will say they are harmless byproducts, but you've got to be careful again. We've seen certain types of photocatalytic oxidators which can produce formaldehyde also as a byproduct, and you have to be very careful of that. So last slide, this is giving you a complete overview of how our system is designed, and a simple system can be designed. The first part is your treated fresh air unit. It's a ventilation unit, fresh air. We're talking about a larger building which has perhaps central air conditioning. That air from the treated fresh air unit, number one, goes into either a heat recovery wheel or an energy recovery wheel. And from there, it goes into my fresh air supply, goes into my air handling units, where you have return air and supply air. In those air handling units, I can control my draft with a variable frequency drive. I can control at what speed my motor and fan is going to run so that the draft is controlled. The third, I can add MERV 13 filtration inside that air handling unit. And so my number 2 and number 3 are taken care of. And then number 4, within my occupied space, the dotted lines that we have at the bottom half of the screen, I can have a recirculation filtration system which has an H13 filter. And number 5, I have my thermostat, which can control my temperature and relative humidity. So I've covered all 5 areas: my ventilation, my draft, my filtration, my filtration with MERV 13 at my AHU level and H13 at my local level for recirculation, and finally my temperature and relative humidity. I create positive pressure within the building envelope so that nothing dirty can come in, but only clean air can go out, and thereby I can ensure perfect air quality. Like I said, like Mr. Mittal said, even the day after Diwali, we were able to get our PM 2.5 numbers to below 10 micrograms per cubic meter. In my own house, our PM 2.5 levels are close to 0 micrograms in the winter months of Delhi when the outside readings are 200, 300 micrograms per cubic meter. So the technologies are available, systems are available. As long as you design them right in the early stage, it makes life much easier for your clients. You design it wrong, later on to fix it becomes that much more difficult for the clients. So if you understand that bit from a very high level of air purification and air design systems, it will go a long way in helping your clients get to what they need. So continue to take things seriously. We are not out of the woods, even though everything seems to be open right now. Continue to do the little things that make a big difference. I read this as I was reading an infectious disease article from a physician at George Washington University. So hopefully we all can stay safe, and wish you all the very best. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the lovely presentation. Fresh air, the different mediums that can be used, MERV 13, H, I'm not sure if the students are aware of these terminologies, but I'm sure there are a lot of questions about the different filters that are available in the market and what can be done. Also, also your thoughts on optimum relative humidity and different aspects, and how we should monitor them with respect to the PMO. So I think if Anand Khatri sir, if you could quickly take the questions for today's session, and if any, you could begin the question, then maybe even I can add in if I have a few.
It was very invigorating. We all realize the limitations of the times that we are facing today, and there are a few questions which I would like to share. The first is, green building certifications address energy efficiency and other aspects of sustainability. Now this question is on how green building certifications address the IEQ. Does the certification from CII and IGBC is made mandatory for some project typology? Are there any mandatories here? I mean, the question is on certification, the parameters that are required for certifications.
So different kinds of certification have different kinds of parameters. I can tell you that the health and well-being certification of IGBC has pretty much all the parameters of IEQ. In fact, there's a specific standard that ISHRE has developed for IEQ. It's called the Indo-Environmental Quality Standard. And we've just published the second edition of that earlier this year. That standard has been adopted by IGBC for the health and well-being standard. So all the parameters that we talk about in the IEQ standard, starting with air to light to sound to thermal comfort and humidity and bacteria, all of these are covered in the IEQ standard of ISHRE, and they are adopted by IGBC for the health and well-being standard.
Just to add to that, so as I know and I'm aware of the fact that in the green building rating system, various ratings that exist, fresh air has been made mandatory for quite some time. It was not taken seriously as until I would say a few months back. Fresh air was not taken. There are various aspects with respect to the cost parameter, or why is fresh air so important, and if you could give a little brief on why fresh air is so important when you design your HVAC.
Absolutely. So to answer it very simply, as human beings, when we breathe air outdoors, we get that feeling of freshness. When you go for a walk in the woods, you get fresh air and you feel good. Why is that? Because the carbon dioxide levels outside are between 350 to 400 parts per million. Now, what happens in a closed room? If this is a room and there was no fresh air over here, if two people are sitting over here also, within 1 hour, your carbon dioxide level will go up to about 1000 parts per million, whereas outside is about 400 parts per million. And within a few more, if we continue to stay in a closed space with no ventilation, it can go up to as high as 2,500, even 3,000 parts per million. And you start to feel a little drowsy, you start to feel suffocated, you can even start to get headaches. And that fresh air becomes very important. In fact, there's a study from Harvard University, the Harvard Medical School, which talks about how your brain productivity starts to go up if you are in an environment with carbon dioxide levels below 650 parts per million. So if you can keep your CO2 low, then it improves productivity, it improves your brain function, it makes you feel better, it makes you sleep better, it makes you work better. So those are, in very simple terms, benefits of working under a tree or working outdoors. You can actually replicate that in closed spaces also if you do your HVAC systems correctly.
I think you can note down the website, which is www.thecogfxstudy.com. The cog, C-O-G-cog, fxstudy.com.
The website, I'll repeat it, it's www.thecogfxstudy.com. So it's, I'll type it down in the chat for everybody very quickly.
Yeah. So, how do you look at the fresh air aspects in the COVID? So I think the rules or the guidelines have changed in the COVID era, and we've kind of revised our thoughts on that. So if you could give us a quick glimpse on what would be the guidelines now when we talk about that.
So typically the calculation of ISHRE, ASHRE for fresh air is 5 CFM, 5 cubic feet per meter of air per person, plus 0.06 CFM of air per square feet of space. So depending on the design of your space, if you have X number of square feet, you would take the X number of square feet and multiply it by 0.06. You would take the maximum occupancy of that space, multiply that number by 5, add the two up, that is your minimum fresh air requirement. And if you're trying to achieve a green building certification, you would add 30% to that number, and you would have a higher amount of fresh air. In the post-COVID world, I would say that is the absolute minimum requirement of fresh air. What we are talking about in the post-COVID world is to increase the fresh air to as much fresh air as you possibly can, because that will reduce the potential chances of contamination in closed spaces. So your minimum number is as per the standard, which is prescriptive, X plus Y plus 30%. And if you can increase it post that, there is a cost to increasing that because there's a cost of energy to increase your fresh air. But what we've done at the Paharpur Business Center, and there was one question, so I'll answer that really quickly. In the Paharpur Business Center, we've created a greenhouse on the rooftop of the building. We bring in air from outside, we clean it up with various filtration technologies so that all the outdoor pollutants like particulate matter, NOx, SOx, etc. are removed. It comes into the greenhouse, and in the greenhouse, what happens is the carbon dioxide comes down even lesser than what is found outside. So if outdoor CO2 is about 400 or 410 parts per million, in the greenhouse, we get CO2 levels between 370 to 380 parts per million. Actually, we even have done this at the APJ corporate office and school in Sheikh Sarai. On the rooftop, we have built a greenhouse for this very purpose, and air is coming in from that greenhouse into that corporate office and school as well. And the carbon dioxide, the reduced carbon dioxide air is what comes into the offices, into the classrooms, and everybody gets an experience of that greenhouse. And as a side effect, we also see the bacteria and the viruses start to get eaten up by the roots of the plants, and those numbers start to come down as well. So if you, and hence, if by doing that, we are able to maintain all the parameters of air quality within the space, and hence we're able to reduce our amount of fresh air and hence reduce the energy cost. So in the post-COVID world, fresh air is very important, but if we can do it, yesterday I got a call from somebody, a confidential client, but they want us to build a bunker, and the bunker needs to be completely bioweapon proof in terms of air quality, and the design has to be such that even if there was a bioweapon or chemical warfare outside, the bunker would be completely safe from an air quality perspective. So we're designing a greenhouse, underground greenhouse with special lights that will come from outside, and the greenhouse will provide all the oxygen and fresh air to that bunker that is required for the occupants of the bunker, and that's possible to do.
I'm sure that's a great. Go for it, Anand sir.
Yeah. There's another question on the RH. Why is RH more effective and less amount of RH, the relative humidity, to prevent COVID virus? Why is that factor working on the COVID virus, and how? How do you assess it now? With reference to air conditioning, there is a basic RH value in air conditioning. So it's a question on air conditioning, actually.
Correct. So there are two sides to RH, right? When it's very, very dry or when it's very, very humid. When it's very dry, you start getting something called static. And when it's very dry, the static and the dryness allows the virus to move very, very easily within a closed space with the draft and the air movement within the space. Similarly, when it's very, very humid, you actually start having moisture particles in the air which are not visible. And those moisture particles can potentially carry your viruses within that space and move it around. And hence, the optimal zone for your RH is between 45% and 65% relative humidity, so that the number of grains of moisture is right about a level which is not too high for it to be transferring the virus all over the place with too much moisture in the air, and not too low so that it creates so much dryness that the static and the air movement also carries that virus. So there is an optimal level of RH that has to be maintained. And it's pretty simple. You can get digital meters which can monitor your RH levels. Ideally, I like one of those handy dry bulb, wet bulb thermometers, which will give me the proper temperature for dry bulb and wet bulb. And those are a lot more reliable from a numbers perspective. But other than that, digital ones sometimes tend to drift a little, so you got to be careful with that.
I think added to this, one has to be drinking a lot of water to make sure that your nose and your nostrils are moist, and possibly putting a little bit of edible oil or whatever the oil you use at home in your nostrils so that they are kept soft and moist. Similarly, gargling and intake of steam, etc., help, but the idea is to keep your throat and the system going, the windpipe actually moist and be able to throw out all the garbage which it accumulates there very easily.
So there's another question. How does the heat recovery wheel work as TFA is applied from terrace to the AHU, you know?
Okay, so that's pretty common nowadays. Heat recovery wheel, essentially, think of it, you have exhaust fans running in your toilets and in your pantries and kitchens. That exhaust fan is pulling air from the toilet. Now, that may be smelly and dirty air, but it is typically air-conditioned air because the air coming into the toilet is from your occupied air-conditioned spaces typically. So the air going out from your exhaust fans is cold. The air coming in from your treated fresh air units is warm because in the summer months in Delhi or in most places in India, your temperatures can hit as much as 40 degrees, even sometimes close to 50 degrees centigrade. And the indoor temperature is typically 22, 23 degrees centigrade. So when you have 45 degrees air coming in and 23 degrees air being thrown out, you have a certain efficiency that you can gain from that cold air that is being thrown out and otherwise being wasted. So in a heat recovery wheel, what happens is you have a single surface where one side of the surface, you have that air going out at 24 degrees. It cools that surface down. And on the other side of that surface, you have the warm air coming in at 45 degrees centigrade. And that cool surface cools the air down to maybe 30 degrees or 34 degrees or 36 degrees, depending on the conditions and the parameters that you've set within the wheel. So the amount of surface area that you have, the amount of time that it touches the surface area, etc., will determine the efficiency of the air that is coming in. So essentially, you're getting free cooling from 45 to 35 potentially, and then you use your HVAC to bring it down from 35 to 25 rather than 45 to 25. So that exhaust air is giving you some energy savings, and that energy recovery wheel pays for itself within a certain period of time.
Great. Moving to the next question. So everybody's quite interested to know about the UV lights that you mentioned about. So if we take a technology and use lights in addition to the AHU, how is the energy impact of the building energy intake? And when we're talking about net zero buildings or any of these other aspects, does that kind of complement each other and work together?
See, in the post-COVID world, we're looking at all kinds of technologies to see what makes buildings safer. If it wasn't for COVID, we would not put UV lights in general for killing viruses and bacteria, because there's a certain amount of exposure to bacteria and viruses, which is good. It builds our immunity. That's why they say Indians have a stronger immunity. But in the post-COVID world, it's now necessary to protect ourselves at the front line from a COVID perspective, and hence technologies like UV are being looked at. From an energy perspective, they are actually not very intensive from an energy perspective. But please do remember that they don't take care of some of the other parameters of air pollution, like volatile organic compounds, like particulate matter. So you do need other technologies like media filtration or something else that will take care of your particulate matter, take care of your carbon dioxide, take care of your total volatile organic compounds. The UV lights would only be good for your viruses and bacteria. Another area where UV lights can be very effective and useful is right behind your cooling coil. Your air conditioners, your larger air handling units have cooling coils. Now, it's very important to keep those cooling coils clean. If you keep those cooling coils clean, air will pass through freely and easily. If it passes through freely, your efficiency of your cooling will be high. And hence, having a UV light at the coil so that it keeps the coil clean actually pays for itself over a period of time, so that your energy efficiency is improved. That's not going to kill all your COVID, because the intensity of that light is not enough to kill COVID in the air that is moving so fast. But it can keep your coil clean and hence keep your energy costs low. So there are certain different applications and different ways you would install UV that would give you benefits, whether it's on energy efficiency or whether it's on COVID. But from an energy consumption perspective, UV can be very effective if used correctly.
Pranati, you are muted. Pranati, unmute yourself, please.
You are on mute, Pranati.
Sorry. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. So I think there are many more questions, and I'm sure a lot of them still have a lot of thoughts of what is going to happen in the post-COVID era, how we are going to look at workplace, how we're going to get back to the normal, how our open spaces or open plans, which have become very popular in the last 10, 15 years, like we'd all moved to this new culture of open plan working. Our designers have done a great job there, and we're again going to look at a different perspective of workspaces. So all these things are of great concern, and I'm sure we have a lot of work to do when it comes to these thoughts. And I would request all the students and all our participants, if you have any questions, do feel free to write to the speakers. The email ID for the feedback or questions has been put in, and I'm sure we'll get more assistance and guidance if required. With this,
Sorry, if I may just add 1 second, Pranati, that they can write in any questions to our website, Greeno at www.premjainmemorialtrust.com. The link is in the chat box. We'll in any case be posting our Q&As on the website and the link of all sessions. So we encourage people, those who couldn't get their answers today, to please write in, and we will get them all the answers and revert back. Thank you.
yes, thank you, Ayana. With this, we come to the end of a very interesting topic, and all our participants have been hooked to it. We've got about 300 participants who are hooked to our session today. So it was a great session, and looking for more interactions in times to come. I would request Mr. Vivek Sabharwal to give the vote of thanks.
Yes, thank you. Green and energy are the two most important aspects of the balance which we must strive to create a sustainable environment where growth and corrective measures go hand in hand. And the combined efforts of IGBC and PGMT stands to its commitment to the cause of the nation and the humanity at large. And I'm thankful to the speakers today, both Mr. Kamal Mirtal and Mr. Baroon Agarwal, for a very purposeful session today, this afternoon. And with the combined energies of Ms. Payal Jain and the other members of PGMT, it's been a very exciting and, one after the other sessions are adding to the body of knowledge that is much required. And I'm really looking forward to some more exciting sessions as we go along. Thank you so much for sharing the valuable inputs with all our participants. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivek Sabharwal, sir. With this, we come to the end of today's session, but we're not bidding goodbye because we have more sessions coming in tomorrow, day after, and then for the next 3-4 days. So do join in to get in more knowledge, more information. Do write about it, do talk about it, and we're happy to receive your feedback of all the sessions that you attend. I would like to thank Payal Jain, Vivek Sabharwal, Anand Khatri, Kamal Mittal, and Baroon sir for joining us today and making this session a success. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.